The candle flickered in the drafty hallway of Ashford Manor. Shadows danced across the stone walls like ghosts from another time. Adeline pressed her back against the cold surface, her breath coming in short, quiet bursts. She clutched a silver tray against her chest, the teacups rattling softly with each heartbeat. She had not meant to hear it. The Duke's voice had carried through the half-open door of his study, low and broken. He spoke to no one, alone in that dark room, and his words cut through the silence like a blade. 6 months, he had whispered. Perhaps less. Adeline's hands had begun to shake. She knew she should leave, should pretend she heard nothing, but her feet would not move. The Duke of Ashford, Lucian Gray, was dying. The man who ruled this estate with iron control, who never showed weakness, who commanded respect with a single glance, was dying. And he had told no one. Now, 3 days later, Adeline stood outside his chambers as the clock struck midnight. The manor slept around her. The other servants dreamed in their small rooms beneath the kitchen. The housekeeper snored in her quarters by the linen closet. But Adeline could not sleep. She had carried this secret like a stone in her chest. It grew heavier each time she saw him, tall and proud, his dark hair perfectly combed, his grey eyes revealing nothing. He moved through the manor as if he would live forever. He gave orders. He reviewed accounts. He stood at the window and watched the rain fall on his lands as if he owned time itself. But Adeline knew the truth. She knocked softly on his door. Silence answered her. She knocked again, her knuckles barely making a sound against the thick wood. "Enter." His voice was sharp, annoyed. Adeline pushed the door open and stepped inside. The Duke's chambers were vast. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, casting orange light across the dark furniture. Heavy curtains covered the tall windows. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, and in the center of it all, Lucian Gray stood behind his desk, a glass of brandy in his hand. He looked at her with cold surprise. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "It is past midnight." Adeline closed the door behind her. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. She was just a servant girl, barely 20 years old, wearing a simple grey dress and a white apron. She had no right to be here, alone with him, at this hour. But she could not stay silent anymore. "I know your secret," she whispered. The words hung in the air between them. Lucian's expression did not change, but his hand tightened around the glass. His jaw tensed. His eyes, those cold, grey eyes, fixed on her with sudden intensity. "You will leave," he said quietly. "Now." "You are dying," Adeline continued, her voice trembling. "I heard you. 3 nights ago. You said 6 months." The glass shattered. Lucian had thrown it into the fireplace. The flames hissed and jumped as brandy fed them. He turned away from her, his broad shoulders rigid beneath his fine coat. "You heard nothing," he said, his voice like gravel. "You will forget what you think you heard, and you will never speak of it again." Adeline took a step forward. "Why have you told no one?" she asked. "You have a sister. You have friends. Why do you carry this alone?" "Because it is none of your concern." He spun to face her, and for the first time she saw something crack in his composure. Pain flashed across his features, raw and terrible. "Because I am the Duke of Ashford, and I will not be pitied. I will not be mourned before I am dead. I will not spend my final months watching people weep and whisper. Do you understand?" His voice had risen, filling the room with barely controlled rage. But Adeline did not flinch. "I understand," she said softly. "I understand that you are afraid." The words stopped him. Lucian stared at her as if she had struck him. His breath came faster, his hands curled into fists at his sides. "Get out," he whispered. But Adeline shook her head. "No," she said. "Not until you tell me the truth. Not until you let someone help you." "Help me?" Lucian laughed, a bitter sound. "I am dying, girl. There is no help. The doctors have done what they can. The illness eats at me from the inside. In 6 months, perhaps less, I will be gone. There is nothing you or anyone else can do. Tears burned in Adeline's eyes. Then let me stay with you, she said. Let me be here, so you do not have to face it alone. Lucian stared at her for a long moment. The fire crackled behind him. Shadows moved across his face, hiding his expression. Why? He finally asked. Why would you do that? Adeline did not know how to answer. She barely knew this man. He was her employer, distant and cold. He had never spoken more than a few words to her. She was nothing to him, just another servant in a house full of servants. But when she had heard him whisper those words in the darkness of his study, something inside her had broken. Because no one should die alone, she said simply. Lucian turned back to the fire. His shoulders sagged slightly, as if a great weight had settled on them. You will tell no one, he said quietly. Not the other servants, not my sister. No one. I promise, Adeline whispered. He nodded slowly. Then stay, he said. But do not expect gratitude. Do not expect kindness. I am not a good man, Adeline. I never have been. It was the first time he had ever used her name. The days that followed were strange. Adeline continued her duties as if nothing had changed. She scrubbed floors. She polished silver. She helped cook prepare meals in the vast kitchens. But now, every evening after the rest of the household had gone to bed, she climbed the stairs to the Duke's chambers. At first, he barely acknowledged her presence. She would enter quietly, and he would be reading by the fire or standing at the window, looking out at the dark grounds. She would sit in a chair near the door and work on her mending, the silence between them heavy and awkward. But she did not leave. After a week, Lucian began to speak. It started with small things. He commented on the weather. He asked if the staff was well. He mentioned a book he was reading. His voice was formal, distant, as if he were speaking to a stranger at a dinner party. But Adeline listened. She learned that he had inherited the estate when he was 22, after his father died suddenly. She learned that he had a younger sister named Catherine, who lived in London with her husband. She learned that he had never married, had never wanted to, because he believed marriage was a trap that turned people weak. Love makes fools of us all, he said one night, staring into the fire. It blinds us. It controls us. I have seen strong men crumble because of it. Adeline looked up from her sewing. Have you ever been in love? She asked quietly. Lucian was silent for a long moment. Once, he finally said, a long time ago. It ended badly. He did not elaborate, and Adeline did not push. But something had shifted between them. On the 10th night, Lucian asked her about herself. Where did you come from? He said, his tone casual. Before you came to Ashford. Adeline set down her needlework. A village to the north, she said. My mother was a seamstress. My father was a blacksmith. They died when I was 16. Fever took them both within a week of each other. I am sorry, Lucian said, and he sounded like he meant it. I came here because I had nowhere else to go, Adeline continued. Mrs. Halloway, your housekeeper, took pity on me. I have been here 4 years now. And you are content? Lucian asked. Working as a servant? Adeline smiled sadly. Contentment is a luxury, she said. I am grateful to have a roof over my head and food to eat. That is enough. Lucian studied her with those grey eyes, his expression thoughtful. You are wiser than you should be, he said softly. And you are kinder than you pretend to be, Adeline replied. He looked away quickly, but not before she saw the faint smile that touched his lips. Something was changing, slowly, carefully, like ice beginning to thaw. But Adeline noticed other things too. Lucian grew tired more easily. Some nights his face was pale and drawn. He would sit for long periods without speaking, his hand pressed against his chest as if it hurt. Once, she saw him take a small bottle from his desk drawer and swallow 2 pills with water, his hands shaking. He never mentioned his illness. He never complained. But Adeline could see it eating at him, stealing his strength piece by piece. One night, she found him collapsed in his chair. She had knocked as usual, but he had not answered. Worried, she pushed the door open and saw him slumped forward, his breathing shallow and labored. "Your Grace!" She rushed to his side, her heart racing with panic. Lucian's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her with confusion, as if he did not recognize her. "Adeline," he murmured. "What?" "You fainted," she said, her hands hovering over him, unsure what to do. "I will call for the doctor." "No." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak but desperate. "No, doctor, I am fine." "You are not fine," Adeline said, tears threatening. "You need help." "I just need to rest," Lucian said. He tried to stand, but his legs would not hold him. He would have fallen if Adeline had not caught him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He was so tall, so much larger than her, but in that moment he felt fragile. "Let me help you to the bed," she said softly. He did not argue. Adeline guided him across the room, taking most of his weight. She helped him sit on the edge of the large 4-poster bed, then knelt to remove his boots. "You do not have to do this," Lucian said, his voice thick with exhaustion. "I know," Adeline said. She set his boots aside and helped him lie back against the pillows. She pulled a blanket over him, her movements gentle. Lucian closed his eyes. "Stay," he whispered. "Please." Adeline sat on the chair beside the bed. She reached out slowly and took his hand in hers. His fingers were cold. "I am here," she said. "I will not leave." He squeezed her hand weakly, and then his breathing deepened as sleep took him. Adeline sat there all night, watching over him, her heart heavy with an emotion she could not name. The next morning, Lucian acted as if nothing had happened. He was dressed and sitting at his desk when Adeline arrived with his breakfast tray. He thanked her politely and told her to go about her day. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. Adeline wanted to argue, wanted to demand that he see a doctor, but she knew it would be useless, so she stayed silent. But something had changed. That evening, when she came to his chambers, Lucian was not inside. Adeline searched the room with her eyes, confused. The fire was lit, but the space felt empty. She was about to leave when she noticed the door to the balcony was open. A cool breeze drifted in, carrying the scent of roses. She stepped outside and found him there. Lucian stood at the stone railing, looking out over the gardens. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The roses below were in full bloom, their petals bright against the dark green leaves. "It is beautiful," Adeline said softly, coming to stand beside him. "My mother planted these roses," Lucian said. He did not look at her, his gaze fixed on the garden below. She loved this view. She would stand here for hours, watching the flowers grow. "She had good taste," Adeline said. Lucian smiled faintly. "She was the only person who ever made this place feel like a home," he said. "After she died, it became just a house. Cold. Empty." "How old were you when she passed?" Adeline asked. 12, Lucian said. "She had been ill for years. We all knew it was coming, but knowing did not make it easier." Adeline heard the pain in his voice, old and deep. "Is that why you do not want to tell your sister?" she asked gently. "Because you do not want her to suffer the way you did?" Lucian turned to look at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You are perceptive," he said. "I listen," Adeline replied. They stood in silence for a moment, the evening air cool against their skin. "Come with me," Lucian said suddenly. "Where?" Adeline asked. "The garden." He gestured to the stairs that led down from the balcony. "I want to show you something." Adeline hesitated. Servants were not meant to wander the grounds with the Duke. If anyone saw them, there would be talk, questions. But the look in Lucian's eyes stopped her protests. "All right," she said. They descended the stone stairs together, side by side. The garden was vast, full of winding paths and hidden alcoves. Roses grew everywhere, their scent thick and sweet. Lucian led her through the maze of flowers until they reached a small clearing. In the center stood a statue. It was a woman carved from white marble, her face serene and beautiful. She held a rose in her hand, and her stone eyes gazed at something far away. "My mother," Lucian said softly. "I had it made after she died. I come here when I need to think." Adeline looked at the statue, at the delicate features and the gentle expression. "She was beautiful," she said. "She was kind," Lucian corrected. "That was more important." He sat down on the stone bench beside the statue, and Adeline joined him. The evening light filtered through the trees, dappling the ground with gold. "I have not brought anyone here before," Lucian admitted. "Not even Catherine." "Why did you bring me?" Adeline asked. Lucian was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Because you do not look at me with pity," he said. "Because you do not treat me like I am already dead. Because when I am with you, I feel like I can breathe." Adeline's heart twisted. "You are not dead," she said firmly. "You are still here. You are still alive." "For now," Lucian said bitterly. "Then make it matter," Adeline said. She turned to face him, her eyes blazing. "Stop hiding. Stop pretending. If you only have 6 months, then live them. Do not waste them locked in your study, alone and angry." Lucian stared at her, his expression unreadable. "What would you have me do?" he asked quietly. "Whatever makes you happy," Adeline said. "See your sister, ride your horses, walk in this garden every day, read the books you love, eat the foods you enjoy. Fill your life with things that bring you joy, not just duty." "And you?" Lucian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Would you be part of that?" Adeline's breath caught. The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. "If you want me to be," she said softly. Lucian reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm now, steady. "I do," he said. "I want you here, with me, for as long as I have." Tears filled Adeline's eyes, but she smiled. "Then I will stay," she said. Lucian lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently, his eyes never leaving hers. And in that moment, surrounded by roses and fading light, something beautiful and fragile began to bloom between them. 3 weeks passed. Lucian changed. He smiled more. He laughed occasionally. He spent less time locked in his study and more time walking the grounds. He took Adeline with him everywhere, to the garden, to the stables, to the small lake on the edge of the estate where swans glided across the water. They talked for hours. He told her about his childhood, about the pressure of being the heir, about the loneliness that had followed him all his life. She told him about her parents, about the village she grew up in, about the dreams she had once held of becoming a teacher. "You could still do that," Lucian said one afternoon as they sat by the lake. "After I'm gone, I will make sure you have enough money to start a new life." "Do not talk like that," Adeline said, her voice sharp. Lucian looked at her in surprise. "I am only being practical," he said. "You are giving up," Adeline said. "Every time you say, 'after I am gone,' you are giving up." "I do not want your money, Lucian. I want you to fight." He flinched at the sound of his name on her lips. She had started using it a week ago, and each time it felt like an intimacy. "There is nothing to fight," he said quietly. "The illness will win. It always does." "Then make the time you have count," Adeline said fiercely. Stop preparing to die and start living. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. You are right, he said. I am sorry. Adeline softened. She reached out and touched his cheek, her fingers gentle. Do not apologize, she said. Just do not give up. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly, but others were beginning to notice. The servants whispered. Mrs. Halloway, the housekeeper, cornered Adeline in the kitchen one morning. What is going on between you and His Grace? She asked, her voice low and concerned. Adeline's stomach clenched. Nothing, she said quickly. He has been kind to me, that is all. Kind? Mrs. Halloway raised an eyebrow. He spends hours with you. He walks with you. He looks at you the way a man looks at a woman, not a servant. He is lonely, Adeline said. I keep him company. There is nothing improper about it. Mrs. Halloway sighed. Be careful, child, she said. Men like the Duke do not marry girls like you, and if people start talking, it will not be him who suffers. It will be you. Adeline knew the housekeeper was right, but she could not stop. She did not want to stop, because something had grown between her and Lucien, something powerful and undeniable. It was not just friendship. It was not just compassion. It was love. She had fallen in love with a dying man, and she did not know what to do about it. One evening, as they sat in his chambers, Lucien suddenly took her hand. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice serious. Adeline's heart raced. What is it? She asked. I wrote to Catherine, he said. I told her the truth. I told her I am dying. Adeline squeezed his hand. How did she respond? She asked. She is coming here, Lucien said. She will arrive tomorrow. Adeline felt a pang of something she did not want to name. Jealousy? Fear? That is good, she said, forcing a smile. You should not be alone in this. I am not alone, Lucien said, his eyes intense. I have you, but I am just a servant, Adeline said, the words tasting bitter. Your sister is your family. She belongs here. You belong here, Lucien interrupted. His hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You belong with me. Adeline's breath hitched. Lucien, she whispered. He leaned closer, his gaze dropping to her lips. Tell me to stop, he said, his voice rough. Tell me this is wrong, and I will stop. But Adeline could not speak. She closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But then, Lucien's arms came around her, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened. It was full of desperation and longing, of all the things they could not say out loud. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. This is madness, Lucien said, his forehead resting against hers. I know, Adeline whispered. I am dying, he said. I know, she said again, tears slipping down her cheeks. And I love you, Lucien said, his voice breaking. Adeline's heart shattered and soared at the same time. I love you too, she said. They held each other in the firelight, the world falling away around them. But they both knew the truth. Their time was running out. Catherine arrived the next day in a flurry of expensive clothes and barely controlled panic. She was beautiful, with dark hair like her brother's and the same grey eyes. But where Lucien was reserved, Catherine was vibrant. She swept into the manor like a storm, demanding answers, demanding to see her brother immediately. Adeline watched from the shadows as Lucien greeted his sister in the drawing room. Catherine threw her arms around him and sobbed. Why did you not tell me sooner? She cried. How could you keep this from me? I did not want to worry you, Lucien said, his voice calm. Worry me? Catherine pulled back, her face wet with tears. Lucien, you are my brother, my only family. And you are dying, and you thought I should not know." "I am sorry," Lucian said quietly. Catherine wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. "How long?" she asked. "The doctors say perhaps 6 months," Lucian said. "Perhaps less." Catherine's face crumpled, but she forced herself to stay composed. "Then we will make the most of it," she said firmly. "I am staying here. Richard can manage without me for a while. I am not leaving you." Lucian smiled faintly. "Thank you," he said. Over the next few days, Catherine took over the household with efficient grace. She ordered the staff around, planned meals, arranged for specialists to come from London to examine Lucian. She was a whirlwind of activity, as if she could keep death at bay through sheer force of will. But she noticed Adeline. "Who is that girl?" Catherine asked Lucian one afternoon as they sat in the library. Adeline had just brought them tea, and Catherine had watched her leave with narrowed eyes. "Her name is Adeline," Lucian said. "She is one of the servants." "She is more than that," Catherine said. "I see the way you look at her." Lucian set down his book. "What are you implying?" he asked, his tone careful. "I am implying that you care for her," Catherine said, "and she clearly cares for you. Lucian, what is going on?" Lucian was silent for a moment. "I love her," he finally said. Catherine stared at him. "You love a servant girl," she said slowly, as if testing the words. "Yes," Lucian said. "Does she know?" Catherine asked. "Yes," Lucian said again. Catherine leaned back in her chair, her expression torn between shock and something else, maybe sadness. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I do not know," Lucian admitted. "I do not have time to marry her, to give her the life she deserves. I do not have time for any of this, but I cannot let her go." Catherine reached over and took her brother's hand. "Then do not," she said. "Do not waste what little time you have worrying about what is proper or what society expects. If she makes you happy, hold on to her." Lucian looked at his sister with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he said. That night, Catherine sought out Adeline. She found her in the kitchen helping to clean up after dinner. The other servants scattered when the Duke's sister entered, leaving Adeline alone. "Walk with me," Catherine said. It was not a request. Adeline followed her out into the garden, her heart pounding. She expected anger, accusations, but Catherine's face was calm. They walked in silence until they reached the rose garden, now bathed in moonlight. "He told me he loves you," Catherine said, turning to face Adeline. Adeline's breath caught. "I love him too," she said quietly. Catherine studied her for a long moment. "I believe you," she said, "but you must understand, this will not end well. Even if he survives longer than expected, society will never accept you. You will be shunned, whispered about, called terrible names." "I know," Adeline said. "And you are willing to face that?" Catherine asked. "For him, yes," Adeline said without hesitation. Catherine's expression softened. "You are braver than I am," she said. "When my husband was courting me, I almost did not marry him because my friends disapproved. I cared too much about what people thought." "But you do not care at all, do you?" "I care," Adeline said, "but not more than I love him." Catherine smiled sadly. "Then you have my blessing," she said, "for what it is worth. Make my brother happy, Adeline. Give him a reason to smile in these final months. That is all I ask." Tears filled Adeline's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Catherine reached out and squeezed her hand. "Thank you," she said, "for being there when I could not be." Another month passed. Lucian grew weaker. It was slow at first, almost imperceptible. A bit more tired in the evenings, less appetite at meals. But then the decline quickened. Some days he could not get out of bed. Adeline stayed with him through it all. She read to him when his eyes hurt too much to focus. She brought him food and coaxed him to eat. She held his hand when the pain grew too intense and the medicine did not help. Catherine hired nurses, but Lucien sent them away. He wanted only Adeline. "You do not have to do this," he told her one night, his voice weak. "You do not have to watch me waste away." "I am not going anywhere," Adeline said firmly. She sat on the edge of his bed, her hand stroking his hair. "I promised I would stay, and I will." "I do not want you to remember me like this," Lucien said, his eyes wet. Weak, helpless. "I will remember you as brave," Adeline said, "as strong, as the man who fought to live every single day, even when it hurt." Lucien reached up and touched her face. "I do not deserve you," he whispered. "You deserve everything," Adeline whispered back. But the fear was always there, lurking beneath the surface. Fear that one morning she would wake up and he would be gone. Fear that she would lose him before she was ready. Fear that loving him would destroy her. One afternoon, a doctor came from London, a specialist Catherine had begged to examine Lucien. Adeline waited outside the bedroom, her hands clenched together, her heart racing. When the doctor finally emerged, his face was grim. "How long?" Catherine asked, her voice shaking. "Weeks," the doctor said quietly. "Perhaps a month if he is strong. I am sorry." Catherine covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Adeline felt the world tilt. Weeks. Not months. Weeks. She stumbled to the nearest chair and sat down hard, her vision blurring. Catherine came to her and knelt down, taking her hands. "We will get through this," she said, though her voice was thick with grief. "Together." But Adeline did not know if she could. That night, she lay beside Lucien in his bed, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was slower than it should be, irregular. "I am afraid," she admitted into the darkness. "So am I," Lucien said. His hand stroked her hair gently. "But I am grateful too. Grateful that I met you. Grateful for these months. They have been the happiest of my life." "Mine too," Adeline whispered. "Promise me something," Lucien said. "Anything," Adeline said. "When I am gone, do not mourn me forever," he said. "Live, Adeline. Find happiness. Do not let my death be the end of your life too." "Do not talk like that," Adeline said, her voice breaking. "Promise me," Lucien insisted. "I promise," Adeline lied, because she knew she could never keep that promise. They lay together in silence, holding on to each other as tightly as they could, as if their embrace could keep death at bay. But death was patient. It was coming, slow and inevitable, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. 2 weeks later, Lucien surprised everyone. He announced that he wanted to host a dinner party. Catherine thought he was mad. "You can barely walk," she said. "How do you expect to entertain guests?" "I will manage," Lucien said stubbornly. "I want one more night, one more evening of laughter and music and life. Is that so much to ask?" Catherine sighed but agreed. The staff worked tirelessly to prepare. The dining room was polished until it gleamed. Candles were placed everywhere. Flowers filled the vases. The cook prepared a feast. And Lucien insisted that Adeline attend. "As a guest," he said. Adeline stared at him. "I cannot," she said. "I am a servant. It would be improper." "I do not care," Lucien said. "I want you there, beside me." "Lucien," Adeline said gently, "people will talk." "Let them talk," Lucien said. His gray eyes burned with intensity. "I have wasted too much of my life caring what people think. I will not waste these final days." So Adeline agreed. Catherine lent her a dress, a beautiful gown of deep blue silk that fit her perfectly. Adeline stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked like a lady, not a servant. The guests arrived that evening. Friends of Catherine's, a few neighbors, people Lucian had not seen in years. They were shocked to find him so thin, so pale, but he greeted them all with warmth and grace, and he introduced Adeline as his companion. The whispers started immediately, but Lucian ignored them. He kept Adeline at his side throughout the evening, his hand finding hers under the table, his eyes seeking her out across the room. After dinner there was music. A small orchestra played in the corner of the drawing room. Couples danced. Lucian stood and offered Adeline his hand. "Dance with me," he said. "You should rest," Adeline said, worried. "I will rest when I am dead," Lucian said with a faint smile. "Dance with me, Adeline." She took his hand. He led her onto the floor, and they swayed together to the music. Lucian was weak, his steps slow, but he held her close and she supported him. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair. "For what?" Adeline asked. "For giving me this," Lucian said. "For giving me a reason to keep fighting." Adeline's eyes burned with tears. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Lucian said. And then, in front of everyone, he knelt down. The music stopped. The room fell silent. Lucian reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, a simple gold band with a single diamond. "Marry me," he said. Adeline's heart stopped. "Lucian," she breathed. "I know I do not have much time," Lucian said, his voice shaking. "I know I cannot give you the life you deserve. But I want to spend whatever time I have left as your husband. Marry me, Adeline. Please." Tears streamed down her face. The room was full of shocked faces, whispers, gasps, but Adeline did not care. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Lucian smiled, a true, radiant smile, and slipped the ring onto her finger. The room erupted into polite applause, though some faces were scandalized. Catherine was crying and smiling at the same time. Lucian stood, and Adeline threw her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she dared. "You are mad," she whispered. "Completely," Lucian agreed, and for the first time in months, he looked truly happy. They were married 3 days later in the small chapel on the estate grounds. It was a quiet ceremony. Only Catherine and a handful of servants attended. Lucian wore his finest suit, though it hung loose on his thin frame. Adeline wore the blue silk dress again, and Catherine wove flowers into her hair. The vicar spoke the traditional words, and Lucian and Adeline exchanged vows. "I promise to love you," Lucian said, his voice steady despite the weakness in his body. "For as long as I have. For as long as I breathe." "I promise to love you," Adeline said, tears streaming down her face. "Beyond breath, beyond time, forever." They kissed, and it felt like the world stopped. Catherine sobbed openly. When they left the chapel as husband and wife, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "It is beautiful," Adeline said, looking up at the colors. "Not as beautiful as you," Lucian said. She laughed and wiped her eyes. That night, Lucian was too weak to do more than hold her. They lay together in his bed, their bed now, wrapped in each other's arms. "Thank you," Lucian whispered. "For what?" Adeline asked. "For making me the happiest man alive," he said. Adeline kissed his forehead. "You have made me happy too," she said. They fell asleep like that, tangled together, their hearts beating in sync. But happiness was fragile. The next morning, Lucian could not get out of bed. The pain was worse. His breathing was labored. The doctor came and gave him medicine, but it did little to help. Adeline stayed by his side, holding his hand, reading to him, singing softly when the pain was too much for words. Catherine sat in the corner, her face pale and drawn. "I do not want to leave you," Lucian said one evening, his voice barely a whisper. "I want to stay." I want more time. I know, Adeline said, her heart breaking. I want that too. Promise me you will be happy, Lucian said again. Promise me you will live. I will try, Adeline said, because that was the only truth she could offer. Lucian's eyes closed. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, Adeline whispered back. And then she felt his hand go limp in hers. Lucian? She said, her voice rising with panic. His chest still rose and fell, but his breathing was shallow, uneven. Lucian! Adeline cried, shaking him gently. Catherine rushed over, her face white. Get the doctor, she said. Adeline ran. But deep down, she knew. The end was coming. The doctor arrived within the hour. He examined Lucian carefully, his face grim. Then he asked to speak with Catherine and Adeline in private. They stood in the hallway outside the bedroom, the air thick with dread. I need to tell you something, the doctor said slowly. Something I should have mentioned before. What is it? Catherine demanded. The doctor hesitated. The Duke's illness, he said, is not natural. Adeline's blood turned to ice. What do you mean? She asked. I mean, the doctor said, his voice low, that I believe he has been poisoned. The word hung in the air like a curse. Poisoned? Catherine repeated, her voice sharp. That is impossible. Who would— I do not know, the doctor interrupted. But the symptoms, the slow progression, the way his body is deteriorating, it matches arsenic poisoning, small doses over time. Adeline felt the ground sway beneath her. Are you certain? She asked. I cannot be certain without more tests, the doctor admitted. But I am experienced enough to recognize the signs. Someone has been poisoning the Duke, and if we do not stop it, he will die within days. Catherine's face went white. Who would do this? She whispered. Who would want to kill Lucian? Adeline's mind raced. And then she remembered. The tea. Every night, for months, Lucian had drunk tea before bed. A special blend, prepared by the kitchen staff, meant to help him sleep. The tea, Adeline said suddenly. It is in the tea. The doctor nodded slowly. That would make sense, he said. A little bit each night. Enough to make him sick, but not enough to kill him quickly. Whoever did this wanted it to look like a natural illness. But why? Catherine asked, her voice breaking. Why would anyone do this? Adeline did not know, but she was going to find out. She marched down to the kitchen, her heart pounding with fury. Catherine and the doctor followed. The kitchen was empty except for the cook, a plump woman named Mrs. Dawson, who had worked at the manor for 20 years. Mrs. Dawson, Adeline said, her voice cold. Who prepares the Duke's tea? Mrs. Dawson looked up in surprise. I do, dear, she said. Why do you ask? Where do you get the ingredients? Adeline pressed. From the pantry, Mrs. Dawson said slowly. The herbs and such. They are delivered from the village apothecary once a month. Who delivers them? Catherine asked sharply. Mrs. Dawson frowned. A boy from the shop, she said. Why? What is this about? Adeline and Catherine exchanged a look. We need to see those herbs, the doctor said. Mrs. Dawson led them to the pantry, a small room lined with shelves. She pointed to a jar labeled Sleep Blend. The doctor opened it and examined the contents carefully. He sniffed it, touched a small amount to his tongue, then spat it out. His face went dark. Arsenic, he said, mixed with the herbs. Clever. It would be almost impossible to detect in the tea. Mrs. Dawson gasped and covered her mouth. I did not know, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I swear I did not know. We believe you, Catherine said, but we need to find out who is behind this. Adeline's mind was racing. The apothecary, she said. We need to go there, now. Catherine nodded. They took a carriage into the village, the doctor and Adeline riding together, while Catherine stayed behind to watch over Lucien. The apothecary was a small shop on the main street, dusty and dim. An old man stood behind the counter, grinding something with a mortar and pestle. "We need information," Adeline said without preamble, "about the herbs you deliver to Ashford Manor." The old man looked up, his eyes sharp. "What about them?" he asked. "Who orders them?" the doctor asked. "Who pays for them?" The old man set down his tools and pulled out a ledger. He flipped through the pages, then stopped. "Lord Greaves," he said. "He pays for the Duke's supplies, has done for years." Adeline's heart stopped. Lord Greaves, Lucien's cousin. The man who would inherit the estate if Lucien died without an heir. "Oh God," Adeline whispered. The doctor's face was grim. "We need to go back," he said. "Now." They raced back to the manor, Adeline's heart pounding in her chest. Lord Greaves. She had seen him only once, months ago, when he had visited the estate. He had been polite, charming even, but there had been something cold in his eyes. When they arrived, Catherine was waiting for them in the drawing room, her face pale. "He is here," she said. "Lord Greaves. He arrived an hour ago. He says he came to pay his respects." Adeline's blood boiled. "Where is he?" she asked. "In the library," Catherine said. Adeline did not hesitate. She stormed toward the library, the doctor and Catherine close behind. She threw the door open. Lord Greaves stood by the window, a glass of brandy in his hand. He was a tall man, handsome in a sharp, cold way. He turned when they entered, his eyebrows rising in polite surprise. "Lady Adeline," he said smoothly. "What a pleasant surprise. And the Duke's sister, of course. To what do I owe this visit?" "You have been poisoning him," Adeline said, her voice shaking with rage. "You have been putting arsenic in his tea. You have been killing him slowly so you could inherit the estate." Lord Greaves did not flinch. In fact, he smiled. "That is quite an accusation," he said calmly. "Do you have proof?" "The apothecary," the doctor said, stepping forward. "He has records showing you paid for the Duke's herbal supplies. Supplies that have been laced with arsenic." Lord Greaves took a sip of his brandy. "Circumstantial," he said. "I have been helping my cousin by covering some of his household expenses. There is nothing sinister about that." "You are lying," Adeline said, her hands clenched into fists. "Am I?" Lord Greaves set down his glass and walked toward her. "Tell me, girl, what did you think would happen? Did you think you could marry a duke and become a duchess? Did you think you could steal an inheritance that does not belong to you?" "This is not about me," Adeline said. "This is about you murdering your own family." "Prove it," Lord Greaves said, his voice turning hard. "Go ahead. Call the authorities. Accuse me. But you will find that I have been very careful. There is no evidence that will stand in court. And by the time you waste your time trying to build a case, dear Lucien will be dead." Adeline lunged at him. Catherine and the doctor grabbed her, holding her back as she screamed. "You monster!" she cried. "You will not get away with this." Lord Greaves laughed. "I already have," he said. But then a voice cut through the room, weak but clear. "No, you have not." Everyone turned. Lucien stood in the doorway, leaning heavily against the frame. He was deathly pale, barely able to stand, but his eyes burned with fury. "Lucien," Lord Greaves said, his smile faltering, "you should be resting." "You poisoned me," Lucien said, his voice gaining strength. "My own cousin, my own blood." "You cannot prove that," Lord Greaves said. "I can," Lucien said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is a confession, written by the boy who delivered the herbs. He admits that you paid him extra to add something to the blend, something you told him was a Special medicine. Lord Greaves's face went pale. "You are lying," he said. "I am not," Lucian said. He handed the paper to the doctor. "I had my suspicions weeks ago. I hired an investigator. He found the boy and convinced him to talk." Adeline stared at Lucian in shock. "You knew?" she whispered. "I suspected," Lucian said, his eyes meeting hers. "But I could not prove it until now." Lord Greaves's mask crumbled. Rage twisted his features. "You were supposed to die," he snarled. "You were supposed to waste away quietly, and I was supposed to inherit. But then she came along." He pointed at Adeline. "That little servant whore who wormed her way into your bed and convinced you to fight." Lucian took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You will never speak of my wife that way again," he said, his voice deadly. Lord Greaves laughed bitterly. "Your wife," he sneered. "She is not a duchess. She is nothing." "She is everything," Lucian said. "And you are finished." Catherine had already sent for the authorities. Within the hour, Lord Greaves was arrested and taken away, shouting threats and curses. Adeline collapsed into a chair, shaking. Lucian stumbled over to her and knelt down, taking her hands. "I am sorry," he said. "I should have told you." "You should have," Adeline said, tears streaming down her face. "But you are alive. That is all that matters." The doctor examined Lucian again that evening. "The poison is still in his system," he said. "But now that we know what it is, we can treat it. With time and care, he may recover." Adeline felt a surge of hope so strong it hurt. "He will live?" she asked. The doctor smiled. "He has a chance," he said. "A real chance." Recovery was slow. Lucian spent weeks in bed, his body fighting to expel the poison. There were dark days when the pain was unbearable, when he could not eat, when he cried out in agony. But Adeline never left his side. She fed him when he was too weak to lift a spoon. She bathed him when he was too tired to move. She held him when the nightmares came, whispering that he was safe, that she was there. Catherine helped too, organizing the household, managing the estate, ensuring that Lucian had everything he needed. Slowly, day by day, Lucian grew stronger. His color returned. His appetite came back. He began to sit up, then stand, then walk with Adeline's support. 3 months after Lord Greaves was arrested, Lucian walked out into the garden on his own. Adeline watched from the balcony, tears streaming down her face. He was alive. He was going to live. That evening, they sat together by the fire, wrapped in blankets. "I thought I was going to die," Lucian said quietly. "I had accepted it. And then you came into my life and changed everything." "You fought," Adeline said. "You did not give up." "Because of you," Lucian said. He turned to face her, his grey eyes intense. "You saved me, Adeline. In every way a person can be saved." Adeline smiled through her tears. "We saved each other," she said. Lucian leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," Adeline whispered back. A year later, Ashford Manor was filled with life again. Lucian had made a full recovery. He was healthy and strong, no longer haunted by the shadow of death. He and Adeline had renewed their vows in a grand ceremony, this time with all of society watching. Some still whispered about the Duke who married a servant, but most had come to respect Adeline for her grace and strength. Catherine visited often, bringing her husband and children. The manor rang with laughter and joy. Lucian and Adeline walked through the rose garden together, hand in hand. "Do you remember the first night you came to my chambers?" Lucian asked, smiling. "How could I forget?" Adeline said. "I was terrified." "So was I," Lucian admitted. "Terrified that you would see how weak I was, how scared." "You were never weak," Adeline said. "You were the strongest person I have ever known." Lucian stopped and pulled her close. "I used to think I was dying alone," he said. "But then you whispered my secret, and everything changed. You gave me a reason to live." "You gave me a reason to love," Adeline said. They kissed beneath the roses, the sunlight warm on their faces. And in that moment, surrounded by beauty and life, they knew they had won. They had faced death and darkness and come out the other side. Together. Always together. 5 years later, the Duke and Duchess of Ashford stood on the balcony of the manor, watching their 2 young children play in the garden below. A boy and a girl, both with dark hair and bright smiles. "Do you think they will understand one day?" Adeline asked, leaning against Lucian. "How lucky we are." "I think they will," Lucian said, "because we will tell them. We will tell them that love is worth fighting for, that life is precious, that even in the darkest moments there is hope." Adeline smiled. "I love you," she said. "And I love you," Lucian said. "Forever." They stood together, watching the sun set over the estate, their hearts full. The secret that had almost destroyed them had become the foundation of their greatest joy. And they would never forget the night a servant girl whispered the truth that changed everything. The night love began.